My wife and mother-in-law often spoke in their native language, so I recorded them, had it translated, and discovered a shocking truth that changed everything. My wife and I got married 2 months ago. We are both from different cultures and ethnicities. In her culture, living with her parents is normal. We had discussed moving in with her parents after we got married, but I wasn't very comfortable with the idea. I was born and brought up in America. My parents moved here in their 20s to achieve their dreams. When I was 19, I moved out and they supported my decision. So I told her that I disliked the idea of moving in with the in-laws. She told me that it was an important part of their culture. I told her that I respected our cultural differences, but that I wouldn't compromise on this. I wanted us to have privacy and I had visited her apartment. It wouldn't fit all of us. Now at this point, I thought that her parents lived with her. She had made it seem that way too. She had told me that she grew up here. We eventually compromised, and she asked me to try it out for a few months. And if I wasn't comfortable, then we could move out. So I agreed. We had a small ceremony when we got married, but it was beautiful. I moved into her apartment and her family was extremely sweet. I didn't feel anything was wrong. Her mother and she would frequently talk in their native language, and I would be curious. I asked her to teach it to me too, but she would refuse and say it wasn't necessary. I told her that I wanted to be a part of their conversations too, but she still wouldn't teach me. Time passed and I took a few classes online, but I was still learning. I only understood a few phrases and words. My wife and I both worked. It had been about a month and a half into our marriage, and my mother-in-law kept telling her to get it done. That's the one phrase I understood. When I would look at her, she would just awkwardly smile at me. I could feel that something wasn't right. I would ask her about it and she would always just blow me off saying that she would tell me later. As the days passed, my mother-in-law got more anxious about it. I tried asking her, but she wouldn't give me an answer either. I was fed up with it. We hadn't even gone on our honeymoon yet. I wanted to go abroad, but she would blatantly refuse and tell me she was busy with work or make up a similar excuse. One day, I was speaking with a coworker of mine. She was from the same country as my wife, but I hadn't heard her speak her native language. I randomly asked her if she spoke the language, and she said yes. I asked her if she could help translate a few lines for me, and she said, of course. I knew it wasn't right, but I was going to record them. I've lived with them for almost 2 months now, and I don't particularly like being left out of conversations all the time. I knew something was up and I was going to find out what. When I went back home that day, I did my normal routine. Once my wife was back, my mother-in-law started speaking fiercely to her. She sounded angry. I immediately started recording their conversation. The next day, I met up with my coworker during my break. I made her listen to the recording and her eyes widened. She didn't know who was speaking. She asked me who this was and I told her it was my wife and my mother-in-law. She told me to immediately get out of there and call the cops. I was shocked. I didn't know what to say. It couldn't be that bad. Right? I asked her if she misunderstood anything and she said no. She proceeded to explain to me that my mother-in-law was pestering my wife to open a joint account with me and to take note of how much money I had. My jaw dropped. What the frick? This lady, my mother-in-law, didn't speak much to me, but acted very sweet. I always thought that she was just a reserved person. My coworker continued to tell me that my mother-in-law was pestering my wife to apply for a green card. She said that my wife was almost yelling at her mother to keep her voice down and kept explaining that for a green card, she had to show proof that I was able to support her financially. She then told me that she kept screaming at her to get it done. I didn't know how to react. I remembered my wife asking me to create a joint account and I had refused. I made more than her, but she wasn't aware of that. I wasn't comfortable opening a joint account with her just yet as I had a few of my prior investment plans that needed to be completed. I hadn't disclosed everything to her, and right now I was thankful that I hadn't. I wasn't aware that she didn't have a green card either. She told me she grew up here. My coworker pulled me into a hug. I didn't notice that I had started crying. She told me to report it to the police and file for an annulment. Divorce was not an option in this case. I went home early that day and packed up my stuff. I had informed my father and he was on his way. My mother-in-law wasn't home, but my father-in-law was. When I rolled my bags out, he tried to stop me. He asked me what was going on, but I just ignored him. My father had come up by now. He was enraged, but was keeping calm because of me. I went back with him to his place. I contacted my father's lawyer and filed a report the same day. My wife called me multiple times that evening. My lawyer recommended not talking to her. This was fraud. One thing my coworker very clearly mentioned was something my wife had said. Her exact words were, "Why do you think I married him? Have you seen his house? It's huge. He doesn't know that I don't have a green card. I'll have to coax him into believing my story. We're married now, but we need to wait to make our move." Looks like that a whole forgot that annulment was an option. The audacity they had to speak all of this out in the open right in front of me. It's a good thing I have proof. I don't know how long this will take, but I'll update you all soon. Update 1. 6 months later, The annulment of my marriage has been granted. You should have seen her face when she knew that I knew. I can't believe I got sucked in by her. I actually thought she loved me. I wanted to ask her why if she actually ever loved me, but the answers were all there in that recording. My lawyer warned me not to contact her during that period. It was better that way. My parents could see how shattered I was over this. I couldn't help but think that if I hadn't recorded them, I would have never known. I would have never thought about this happening, or that these were her intentions. I know many of you have asked what her native language is and which country she is from. I haven't mentioned that information because I don't want to promote any stereotypes. Of course, charges were pressed against her, and she had to pay for them. There are a few other things I cannot make public. What I can tell you is that she won't get away with it. There are chances that she and her family may get deported. Her parents were here on a visitor's visa anyway. I'm still staying with my parents. I don't trust them one bit. I'm very grateful for my coworker. If it wasn't for her, I would have never known, and that's horrifying to me. I'm just trying to move on now. Thank you all for your support. NTA. At first, I thought Op was stupid to just trust the coworker's word, but then I realized I was stupid. Nobody would joke about a situation like this. It's a good thing she got out of that ASAP while reading this. I was praying the Op wouldn't confront them by herself like in those dumb movies. Good thing my gal is smart and just quietly packed and got out of there. NTA. I feel so bad for the Op, poor girl. I can't imagine anyone going through a situation like this just 2 months into their marriage. But on the bright side, it's better she found out now than later. Not gonna lie, it would have been terrible if Op confronted her by herself. These types of people who knows what they're capable of. For the people saying that she should have done more research on her background or found out more about her family. Do you all realize how good she must have been to get her to marry her? Op doesn't seem like a fool either. She followed her gut instinct and found out what was going on. She even tried to learn their language. Of course, her intentions were good when she did so, but these asses, her whole family were in on it. This is fraud. Good thing she got it annulled. A divorce would have been problematic. NTA, and that is why you never disclose your finances fully. She got emotionally played by her. I hope Op and her family can move on and live a better life. Poor people must be traumatized by this experience. Update 2. 1 year later. I never thought I'd be writing another update, but so much has happened that I feel I need to share. The legal proceedings finally concluded last month, and it was even worse than I initially thought. During the investigation, they discovered my ex-wife had attempted this same scheme before with another person in a different state. She had managed to escape detection that time because the previous target hadn't pursued legal action, fearing immigration consequences for themselves. My father's lawyer was incredible throughout this whole process. She managed to uncover a network of similar marriage fraud cases connected to my ex-wife's extended family. Apparently, this was something of a family business, arranging fraudulent marriages for people seeking green cards. They specifically targeted financially stable American citizens who lived alone or had minimal family involvement. The hardest part was discovering that my ex-wife had detailed notes about me from before we even met. She had researched my family's background, my career, and even my daily routines. There were screenshots of my social media posts going back years, all annotated with observations about my financial status and personality traits that could be exploited. It was chilling to see how methodically I had been chosen as a target. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were deported last week. My ex-wife is facing criminal charges and will likely be deported after serving her sentence. The prosecutors found evidence linking them to at least 5 other fraudulent marriages across 3 different states. The silver lining in all of this, if you can call it that, is that my story has helped others. After local news picked up the story, with names changed for privacy, 3 other victims came forward with similar experiences. The authorities are now investigating what they believe to be a larger organized crime ring specializing in marriage fraud. I've been in therapy for the past 8 months, working through the trust issues this whole experience has left me with. It's been challenging to process how someone could spend months pretending to love you while methodically planning to exploit you. My therapist says I'm making progress, but I still find myself second-guessing people's motives, especially in dating situations. My coworker who helped translate the recording has become one of my closest friends. She's been an incredible support through all of this, helping me understand cultural nuances I missed and supporting me through the legal proceedings. She even introduced me to a support group for people who have experienced similar situations. My parents have been my rock through everything. They've helped me move into a new place, and we've actually grown closer as a family. Dad still occasionally blames himself for not seeing through the deception, but I keep reminding him that none of us could have known. For those wondering about financial impact, thanks to never creating that joint account and the quick action with the annulment, my finances were protected. The court even ordered my ex-wife to pay restitution, though I'm not holding my breath on ever seeing that money. I'm slowly starting to date again, though I'm much more cautious now. I've learned to trust my instincts when something feels off, and I'm no longer afraid to ask difficult questions early in relationships. I'm also taking language classes again, this time just for myself, and it's actually becoming a passion of mine. To everyone who supported me through my original posts, thank you. Your comments helped me feel less alone during one of the darkest periods of my life. To anyone who might be going through something similar, trust your gut, document everything, and don't be afraid to reach out for help. There are people and resources available to support you. I'm hoping this will be my final update. I'm ready to close this chapter of my life and move forward. While I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, it has taught me valuable lessons about self-worth, trusting my instincts, and the importance of having a strong support system. Here's to new beginnings. Update 3, 2 years later. Life has a way of coming full circle. Yesterday, I testified at the final trial related to the marriage fraud ring. My ex-wife was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, followed by immediate deportation. The investigation that started with my case led to the dismantling of an operation spanning 5 states and involving over 20 fraudulent marriages. The prosecutor revealed something that still haunts me. My ex-wife had been doing this since she was 18. I wasn't her second victim, I was her fourth. She'd gotten better at it each time, refining her approach, learning how to be more convincing. The notes they found about me were just the tip of the iceberg. But this update isn't about her. It's about healing. Remember my coworker who translated the recording? Well, she's now running a support organization for victims of marriage fraud. I volunteer there on weekends, helping others navigate the legal process and emotional recovery. It's therapeutic, turning something painful into something purposeful. Last month, I gave a talk at an immigration fraud awareness conference. Speaking about my experience was terrifying, but the response was overwhelming. Several attendees approached me afterward, sharing similar stories. Some had never told anyone before. We're working on creating a nationwide support network. My parents have become advocates too. Dad, especially, has thrown himself into raising awareness in our community. He's organized workshops with local law enforcement about detecting marriage fraud schemes. Mom jokes that he's found his second calling. The therapy has paid off. I'm dating someone new, someone wonderful who understands my past and respects my need for transparency. She's patient with my occasional moments of doubt and actually encouraged me to keep speaking at awareness events. We've been together for 6 months, and for the first time since everything happened, I'm excited about the future. I finally moved back into my own place, though I have dinner with my parents twice a week now. Our relationship is stronger than ever. Dad no longer blames himself, and Mom has stopped checking my dating app profiles, mostly. The language classes I started taking? I'm now fluent in Spanish and starting Mandarin. It's become more than a hobby. I'm considering getting certified as a translator to help others who might be in situations similar to what I faced. Sometimes I think about that recording, how one desperate decision to understand what was happening around me changed everything. My lawyer still uses my case as an example in her fraud prevention seminars. She says my story has helped change how law enforcement approaches marriage fraud investigations. To the Reddit community that supported me through this journey, thank you. Your words of encouragement, advice, and even your anger on my behalf helped me feel less alone. To those who shared their own stories in the comments, you gave me strength when I needed it most. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. I've found purpose in this pain, using my experience to help others avoid or escape similar situations. Life isn't perfect, but it's good. Really good. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I don't know about that, but I do know that what hurts you can help others. And sometimes, that's enough to make the hurt worth it. This is definitely my last update. Not because the story is over, but because it's time to start a new one. Thank you all for being part of my journey to healing.